Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Dark Hypotheses, our dark matter fan cast on the E2KG Network. I'm one of your co-hosts, Agasically Stamus, joined, as always, by the Honorable Mr. Dave Pecci. Dave, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Good.
Love this episode.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. So tonight we will be breaking down and discussing episode number 8 of season 3, subtitled Hot Chocolate. Which definitely had me a bit concerned when I saw the title for many angles. One, because I'm a minority and I wasn't sure where that title was. I wasn't certain where that title was pointed. I was also a little concerned because of the whole hot coffee scandal from Grand Theft Auto from several years ago, and I was like, are we about to get ourselves in trouble? Because I'm not really certain where this is headed. So I was glad to see that it was a very benign subtitle. So while I'm getting the social media stuff out, Dave, as I always ask you to do, and it is not an easy assignment, I definitely understand that, but as much as you can to give me time to get the social media announcements out, give me your general feeling on the episode without giving too much away of the discussion, which will follow.
So this is, I don't know if it was a 3 or 4 part episode, but it all went really well together, tying in like parts of different episodes and all kind of bringing it back. So like there's that weird guy that we were talking about with Joseph Malozzi who like had the tentacles or wires sticking to him, and me and Agasicles thought it was a girl, and that guy shows up in this episode. And so that was pretty cool. There was a reference to that bounty hunter that's carbonated in the wall, and I love that reference that they brought him up again because he's still there, and that was cool that they did that. And I really hope we get more of those like references from like past episodes. I was totally blown away. I thought this was going to be all about a Sarah episode. And it wasn't so much. She was involved, but it wasn't an episode all about her. I think that was kind of good. And I also loved how they tied in kind of Six coming back. And they still leave us a mystery in that. And I can get in deeper later about how I feel about that. I actually don't remember whose week it is for a hypothesis. I go either way. I'll let it go to Agasicles this week because I think last week I did it. But I feel like there was great acting this episode. It was really good to see Melissa O'Neill confront Rio. That was just great. And it was just a very pleasant episode. I think it went really well with this season. And the other thing I don't know if Agasicles and I want to talk about, but I've heard that there's been doubt that they might not renew for season 4. I really hope they do. If you're watching this podcast, please give your support to the show on Twitter. Please do that. Email them. Yeah, we want to be able to do this podcast for many more seasons, and we know Joseph Malozzi does as well. I guess, Liz, I don't know if you're ready yet. I keep talking.
Yeah, no, we're good. I got the tweet out at least.
Okay.
So I guess we could talk a little bit about renewal. So the big thing is it's just an unknown right now, right? In the yardstick that I think everybody is kind of looking at is the fact that by this time last season, they had already gotten the word that they were renewed for season 3. So, those things don't always happen at the same time from year to year. But it can definitely cause some shakiness and doubt. It's interesting too, because to me, I feel like overall they are hitting their stride more so this season than they were in season 2.
Yeah.
So I feel like I can see particularly the actors who have been on for longer kind of more so settling into their roles and becoming very comfortable with who the characters are. So it's I haven't looked at ratings, so I don't know how the show is doing numerically from a metric standpoint, but You know, so I mean, the only thing we can do is you know, cross our fingers, I guess, so to speak. You know, so and hope for the best, right? So in fact, I'm gonna add to the tweet. I have a little
hashtag renews dark matter.
Right, and there's all sorts of campaigns like to live tweet, right, the upcoming episode and things like that. So you know, hopefully those things all lead to you know, support for the show. You know, Mr. Velazzi had a tweet thread going on a little while ago, and one of the comments I made back in that was, you know, so for you and I, right? I did a little estimate because we were talking a little bit about our lives at work, and doing estimates for work to be done, level of effort, right, is a large part of my job. So I just did a little estimate, and you know, as far as I know or can tell, between the two of us, we spend 7 to 8 hours a week doing this show, right? Between you know, watching, you know, two people watching the episode, making talking points and show notes, you know, all the prep work to set up to get on from our individual podcasting stations, you know, doing the live show, and then all of the editing that then goes into post-production and then publishing it, and social media and all that stuff. It's about 8 hours of work a week. That's not something that two people normally do because we don't have something, you know, because we're bored or we don't have something better to do with our lives, right? That's because something has invoked and inspired a passion in us that sparks and drives us to make that investment and commitment. So you know, so I just posted those metrics in that Twitter thread, in the hopes that, you know, the SyFy Network would see that and go, hey, you know, fans are putting in time to express their love and their affection for this show. So, and of course, I mean, we're just two people, right? But tons of other fans are also doing other things and just watching the show, right? So yeah. So I hope I hope it's recognized and you know. I guess the good news is so now I don't watch this on network television. Do you, Dave?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I recorded it, so it was on network television. Okay.
So I'm not directly exposed to this whole like Friday night thing that goes down. But I guess the Friday night lineup is like Winona Earp and Dark Matter and The Expanse. Are those the three shows that are on Friday night?
I think so, right? Winona Earp is like pretty popular. The Expanse, I don't think is as huge in America as it is. It's bigger, I think, in like Britain and Canada and some of the more, how do I want to put this? Kind of the, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Under the patriarch or whatever. Because I know Canada and Australia and the UK are more into The Expanse than the US, because I know those areas were able to get The Expanse on Netflix, whereas the American Netflix, they didn't see Expanse being popular enough.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's logical that, you know, certain shows would play better in different regions, depending on cultural differences and whatnot. So. I think the good news is that at least Winona Earp has been renewed for their next season, and maybe The Expanse has too. So, and I don't know what the exact setup is at SyFy Network for those three shows, but I know, you know, I'm in contracting, so I do contract work, and I'm definitely. You know, a dynamic where I work is, you know, contract renewals are sequenced based on when the contracts were let. So if just, calendar year wise, those shows were kind of, preceded Dark Matter in terms of when the most recent deals were locked in. It's feasible that they're just working through them sequentially. So I don't know. We just hope for the best, right?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start talking about this episode. So Dark Matter, episode number 8, season 3, subtitled Hot Chocolate, right? The basic setup for the show is the show opens and there are multiple delegates on board the ship from the independent colonies who are trying to become a unified, some type of unified governmental structure that would then apply to the. I don't have the Dark Matter wiki open now. I will get it open shortly. Who are going to apply for membership to the whatever it is,
was that the League of Autonomous States?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
There we go. So, and so 6 is having a conversation with 3 representative delegates from different factions of these independent colonies, trying to get them to unify. And there's lots of arguments, and it actually reminds me of there were probably a few issues of Star Trek: The Next Generation that kind of had this initial setup and scenario of the Enterprise playing host to multiple parties who would hold various peace conferences and whatnot, actually on board the ship, or would be there to be transported somewhere to participate in a peace conference. And Worf and Riker would have to keep them all separated until the actual peace negotiations started. And there was definitely, there were multiple episodes with when Sarek was supposed to kind of lead negotiations, and one where Lwaxana Troi was supposed to lead the negotiations and whatnot. So it definitely kind of harkened back to those kind of classic episodes. But shortly after the negotiations start, they retire to their quarters for the evening, and then one of them winds up dead. And then it's a matter of trying to figure out, who done it, and then they find out that the android is acting strangely. So that's kind of the basic setup. Let's go ahead and start running it down by the numbers from our various talking points. So, when the episode opens, they are actually engaged in combat, or quickly engaged in combat. A Ferris Corp cruiser shows up and starts attacking 6 of the delegates. They're actually having the peace conference. The peace conference is actually starting on a planet surface, and a Ferris Corp cruiser shows up and starts firing missiles. Android is on the bridge and takes one of the missiles out, and then 2 and 3 soon arrive on the bridge to find out what's going on. Other Ferris cruisers drop in out of FTL, and in the course of it, Android pretty much handles all of the combat protocols, and kind of handles the whole thing. The Marauder comes in. There's this beautiful and look, I love in action sequences, I love the beauty of starship combat and how ships maneuver. In space, and the whole, effectively positioning the ship for defensive or offensive action. And so there's a flying sequence where Android brings the Raza in, right over the bridge, and just abaft of the pointy end of the bow of the cruiser, where it can't train its weapons on the Raza. And the other 2 cruisers are coming in behind the Raza, so they can't fire on the Raza at the time either, for risk of hitting the other Ferris cruiser. And then as she crosses the bridge, she slews the ship around, and points the Raza's bow towards the stern of the Ferris cruiser, and the Marauder comes in and tucks in the underbelly of the Raza and docks. So it's an in mid maneuver docking of the Marauder. The whole sequence just looks beautiful. I comment on it because obviously something like Star Trek, or something that's really ship combat oriented, like Star Trek: The Next Generation had to be, because of the precedent that had been set by the original series movies. There hasn't been a ton of that in Dark Matter. So I really like seeing it. And my talking bullet was, it was just a great old-fashioned sci-fi opening sequence. I love the flying, maneuvering, docking maneuver, an android fighting the whole ship solo based on like the preset protocols, right? So there was no need for her and two to have a dialogue about, lots of times scenes that are done like that, and there's these like every 2 seconds, right? The captain is giving a direction input to whoever's on the helm, so to speak, and there was none of that, right? They just kind of autonomously went into their pre-planned action. So I really like seeing that. Did you have any takeaways from that opening sequence, Dave?
I just thought it was pretty cool, and I like seeing more of the action with the ships as well.
Cool. And I cannot. So as the delegates, then they get onto the Raza. There's some more conversation, and then two comes in and just says, "Look, we have quarters for you guys." There's a little prickliness. I know one of the delegates asked to use the ship's comlink to radio back, and two's like, that's not going to happen. We're going radio silent, and there's some pushback over that. But as they're leaving, Six says, I'm done with you guys, right? This is it. Like, you guys aren't working together. I wrote her name down. There's a woman who's a delegate. She's the only female there. Quill. I picked up her name via the subtitles. And she is kind of imploring him, hey, don't give up on us yet. We'll get through this. And she says, you didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you? And Six's response is, well, I didn't think it would be that easy, but I was hoping there would at least be some compassion, right? That you guys would sympathize with each other. And her line at this point is, don't give up on us yet. We need you. And I felt like those 3 words had a very big weight for me. I actually got a little choked up because it's an extension of the purpose and need of one of those characters, the crew of the Raza, in the universe beyond the confines of the Raza, right? And it felt like a recognition and a realizing of a certain character's destiny, delivered in a very quick phrase. So, what were your feelings on that whole sequence?
I mean, it's hard, like, knowing the end of the episode. I guess I know what you're getting at. What I thought of that scene was kind of, there's a lure back to the importance of Six being this, essential part of being kind of, the voice of reason, not only for the Raza, but also kind of for the colonists. He's kind of like, he's coming off as the good guy, but towards the end of the episode, like, I kind of have doubt casting him that he's pulling one over on everybody. Because man, it's so hard to, like, think of Six, like, because I think it's at the very end of the episode that I'm skipping ahead, but they join the League of Autonomous Nations, and then Pierre is attacked. I didn't quite understand it, but I think that they joined Ryu after all, or they didn't join Ryu at the end of the episode.
They did. So
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we could definitely go over that as we get through more of the rundown.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that I think that scene. I think it seems like Six is doing a good thing, and it kind of seems like he's the voice of reason, but I feel like he's pulling one over. I don't know. That's just my take.
Right. This is your feeling about the whole Agent Zero thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. So another thing that I caught during this scene is, overall the graphics quality I feel like is way up. Like, now when you zoom in closely on the Raza, like, I feel you can see a lot more detail. It's a lot brighter. There's better lighting on the CG. So and there's a scene where they drop out of FTL, and there's an overhead scene looking down on the Raza as it passes over this green planet, kind of luminous and swirly planet. And I thought, man, that looks really sharp. It feels like it looks better than stuff from season 1 and season 2. So I just thought that was good. Then we start getting into these indications that there's something up with the android, right? She misses a hair appointment with Five, who was going to do her hair, and she comes rushing around the corner and bumps into Five, sort of, and looks very aggressive, as if she dislikes Five, although there's no overt action at that point. And I'm just thinking, like, so there's a lot of things that would be scary, like traveling through a tin enclosure in space, but man, the thought of the android malfunctioning and being trapped in a confined space with her, to me, is one of the most horrifying things in the world. Is that something that resonates with you, or?
Yeah. No, I totally thought that. My thought was that somebody hacked her or whatever. I thought it could have been one of the colonists that were secretly bad or something like that. Or I thought it was Sarah taking over. But yeah, I thought it was kind of creepy.
Yeah. So another thing happens in the next sequence. At this point, the one delegate has been killed, and 6 is hyper focused and determined to figure out who it is. And 2 starts talking about getting somewhere where they can drop the delegates off, because they're a security threat. Obviously, being trapped on a ship where there is a known murderer running around is not the most encouraging thing in the world. But 6 and I do this a lot, and a lot of times it's not healthy, right? I have this like innate need to not let people get away with things, right? When I know that they have knowingly done wrong, and I feel like they're laughing all the way to the bank. So 6 kind of goes into that mode as well, and doesn't want to let the delegates off until they figure out exactly what has happened and who killed the one delegate.
But that I saw that as a suspicious action of him. I mean, all through this episode, I'm still very suspicious of him. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and I can definitely see that. So for me though, what I took away from it is, what 2 says to him is, you need to let this go. You're not a cop anymore. And it struck me at the time that, I've always kind of thought of the crew of the Raza as this ragtag crew of people who have been, collected from these basically orphan vector backgrounds, right? But the reality is that wasn't the case for 6. Like, he belonged to something, right? He had a notion of being a part of something that was greater than himself, and although he hit a point where he was soul searching, and there was a whole thing with the general, at the end of the day, it just clicked with me how, even with the crew of the Raza, he is probably one who still feels like an outsider. And I don't think that's simply because of the whole thing of, like, when he got his memory back and turned them all in. I think it's a thing that was there before and continues today, where even though they're the crew of the Raza and they're all changing and they're trying to get for the better, right? It's the fact that he was a cop and still kind of acts that way to a certain extent, I think is a distinct separation between him and the rest of the crew. So I don't know. Do you have?
I mean, yeah, he had like a wife and he was a cop. Could have been this double agent. I mean, who knows when that happened? That could have been after he was, a good cop. But I think that I hope I'm getting the numbers right. 5, right, is the young girl.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So 5, you know, I think she comes from kind of a semi-normal background. You know, she was, you know, a trained student. She's got a sister, and you know, she doesn't come from a criminal background. You know, but then there was also 1 who came from a normal background as well. But out of the current crew, yeah, I think he's probably the one that comes from the most normal background right now. I mean, they've all had their own tragedy, you know. 5, you know, her mentor, you know, she betrayed him. Her parents were killed or whatever. You know, she grew up on the streets. 6, you know, he helped in that general thing. So I think he's still connected, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just moving my screens around.
No.
So yeah, so slightly different takes, but yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, right, between, you know, the criminals, the non-criminals, and the in-betweens, I guess. You know, so as we continue on, you know, we start getting into this thing where we see how 5 is the one who hasn't been captured. I guess maybe we should cover a little bit of that. Again, we're assuming that most people who are watching this show watched the actual episode. So, so at this point, you know, so like you mentioned, right? We get the indication in the reveal that that the guy in the wheelchair, I think Mr. Malazzi mentioned the same thing, right? But he reminds me of this
Adam Webb, right?
Adam Webb, yes, right. So
and he kind of has like the same telepathic abilities, right? So when you look at the guy, he kind of makes you think he's got some sort of telepathy magic going on.
Right, yeah. And I'm not perfectly familiar with that character, but yeah, I think that's the basic gist of it. So we find out that it's him controlling the android, and 5 is the one who has gotten away, and she starts utilizing the Neuralink, establishes comms with Sarah, and starts trying to work the problem. And my talking point at this stage was, you know, 5 is arguably the most resourceful of the crew, right? She has the least level of direct combat skills, but given the tool set that she has, it seems like she's the one who gets the most done. And I love the scene of her kind of pulling together her go bag. And I feel like I don't know if you ever watched Silverhawks as a kid, but in that cartoon there was this character named Hardware, and my brother and I used to crack up over Hardware. He was this little, it was a Rankin and Bass cartoon, so of course lots of things in Rankin and Bass tend to have the look and design feel of things that they created when they did the Lord of the Rings animated version in the late 70s, early 80s. But he kind of looks like this little, like a small version of a goblin from that series. But he has this roll up like knapsack, and when he unrolls it, there's anything in there from a screwdriver to like a proton disintegrator, right? So, and I had that feel from watching 5 like put together and then unpack her go bag, right? She's got, I mean, everything in there from her, you know, semi-automatic pistol to her, you know, Windows 3015 tablet, you know, Surface tablet that she has that she uses to jack into everything. And I'm like, this is the character that's really dangerous, right? If it's Boone, you kind of know what he's going to do to you, right? He's going to pull a gun. If you run into 2, you know that she's going to go hand to hand with you. But when it's 5, like, again, going back to like things that are really, really scariest things, one of the scariest things for somebody assaulting the Raza has to be the notion that 5 is out on the loose somewhere, right? And that's exactly what we have this episode, you know, and so, she's amassed this small arsenal with her pistol, the Neuralink, her tablet, and her other gadgets and devices. And I thought, Dave, I was going to ask you, is one of the reasons we identify with 5 is because she's the one who's most like us. Yes,
yeah, right. And I was just thinking that I remember in the episode there was like a mention of subnet, and I'm like, I'm learning about subnets. I somewhat know what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of wonder if 5 existed in our time and space, if she would just be a podcaster, right, and a blogger. So
yeah.
So it's pretty funny. Then, like you mentioned, right, then there's the fight between 2 and 4. And maybe I shouldn't reference him as 4 because he is an inherently different personality. Now I guess I'll have to call him Ryu. But there's this point and so during the fight, again, going back to my talking points, right? And in my mind, there shouldn't be any way that 4 beats 2. If theoretically 4, if Ryu is a person who is kind of at the height of at the apex of human combat capability, at the end of the day, 2 is still something more than human. And there's a point in the fight where I don't think they were slaps. I think they were supposed to be punches, but she punches him with a cross and then kind of backhands him, and it just looks like a total bitch slap. And I was like, Ishida getting bitch slapped twice by 2 is like one of the most excellent things ever on the show. I'm like, I can't think of a more like physically representative manner of putting him in his place, and effectively, like, physically evoking, what the rank status is between the 2 of them. So
yeah, and I loved how the conversation ends, where she's like, "Well, you do what you got to do, but I will put you in your place in the end, or I will take you out if I have to."
Yeah, so that's at the closing sequence, so we can kind of jump ahead just to talk about that a bit, and so well, let me come back to that because there's a few other things in there, but yes, I absolutely liked that line in that scene too. So here's where we firmly get confirmation that it's the Madam Web guy who's controlling the android, because Ryu shows up and there's a conversation between he and android, and you get the actual flashing, the scene cuts of back to the Madam Web guy, back on the Ishida cruiser. So up until this point, like you mentioned, right, I was like, is this Sarah gone rogue? But another jump that I made, I was like, oh, I wonder if, because Ash is trapped in stasis and is embedded in the hull, nobody ever said that he wasn't conscious, right? So because
he's just alive and they're frozen in carbonite. Right.
And so there's this whole notion that the Raza with the Neuralink is kind of a living entity. So there was a point where I thought, particularly because we hadn't seen the Madam Web guy and we didn't really know what his personality was. And the android, as she's trying to figure out what's going wrong, calls 5 a little bitch, which sounds obviously very aggressive. And I was like, that sounds like something Ash, the assassin, might have said. And so I was thinking that this was something about Ash being embedded in the ship, but being conscious, and being able to establish a link with the android and override her primary action cortex or whatever. That was not the case. And it was the Madam Web guy. And at this point, we start, like I said, 5 goes and is able to establish comms with Sarah within her construct. What were your feelings on those scenes with Sarah?
Oh, it totally hit me kind of by surprise. I totally thought Sarah was going to be turned into this evil AI, which you never know, could still happen. But I loved it, and now I feel in my heart, oh, please don't get rid of Sarah. Like, she's such a great asset now, and like she's kind of like the backup android, you know? And it's like perfect. It's like, all right, your android's out, but now you got this backup AI who can help you control the ship, and it's just kind of cool. And it's good for her too, because she feels like she's involved, you know, and it gives her a purpose back.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm really becoming a huge fan of Natalie Brown. She handles it all very well, right? She presents the whole emotional vector, but also representing strength and the fact that she has learned how to create all these things within her environment. That she's actually exceeded the initial capabilities in terms of systems level access that she was given. And then that as an actress, she also handles the techno babble, right? So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this, in this episode, she's got to talk about firewalls and synapses and neural links and crossover, and I mean, she doesn't skip a heartbeat. She doesn't skip a beat, going through all that. So I was really impressed. She's the total package, right? I don't really know how else to say it, but I like what she's bringing to the show, and I'm hoping that she is able to continue into the later seasons. So
yeah.
So and my talking point is there that I wrote down was as predicted, Sarah is becoming an integral member of the ship and crew. Now we just hope that she uses those powers for good, as you mentioned, right? That she doesn't go become evil AI. So it's interesting. It was interesting to me that Ryu led the attack team himself, and that his counsel in his court would allow him to do so. Later, we find out that it's and we should have known, right? It's just I didn't think about it that by using the hyper transport that they are actually clones. Of course, as soon as that's said, I'm like, all right, so it's open season on the clones, right? Because they can be killed without any sense of moral remorse. But I found it kind of surprising that still his court would allow him, even in his clone form, out of fear that the clone could be captured and would have all the knowledge of the actual Ishida. Did you have any feelings or concerns about that part of the setup?
I didn't think too deeply about that. No.
Okay. Gotcha.
Thought he.
What's that, Dave?
Oh no, yeah, just what I was saying is I didn't think too deep into that thought.
Okay.
I agree with you. That's something that's good to consider.
Right. So at this point in the episode, there were about 18 minutes left, and everybody who could have participated in any type of rescue or getting out of this thing is all neutralized, and it's up to only 5, right? And maybe we should say only 5 and Sarah. And at the end of the day, this whole thing is really resolved by 5, Sarah, and the android. And so once again, we have a situation where the men are of no help, right? And it's really the women who get them out of it. And again, and I saw an article, and I think Mr. Malazzi also maybe wrote a blog post, or maybe he just tweeted out the link to this article that talks about dark matter, as far as all the discussion about, right, that we're finally getting good, strong representation of women on shows. Although again, I would link that lineage back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the series. I feel like was really the start of that renaissance. But dark matter has kind of historically done an excellent job. I mean, starting with the very core notion that it's 2 that's the captain of the ship, right? In this season, we have Star Trek Discovery coming on, which has, and again, I'm surprised just because of the sequencing, because the last Star Trek on television was Voyager, and that had a female captain. In the new Star Trek Discovery, we're getting Michelle Yeoh as the captain and Sonequa Martin Green as her XO. So you now have both the first in command and the second in command being portrayed by women, which is great. But Dark Matter. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Just you bringing that up, it just made me realize there seems to be like right now, at least from what I can tell, like some sort of sci-fi pattern, where you have a captain, in Star Trek that would be Picard, and then you kind of have your grunt who would be Worf, and then in this show it would be 3. Then you have your LaForge would be 5 in this, and then I think the counselor Troy, is it right? Would probably be our 6. So it's interesting, and then of course Data and Android. Of course they're so different, and it's a whole different type of like atmosphere. But I was just thinking about those similarities.
Yeah, and like Mr. Malazzi said, right? He doesn't and hasn't and isn't going to shy away from tropes, right? So, or not tropes, but tropes. He's not gonna. There are definitely these notions of a paradigm of your basic construct and framework for a sci-fi show, and when he sees those things and he knows those things, he's just going to fire right at them, and then kind of tilt it on its head and tweak it and have it come out on a different vector than the norm. Because, of course, as fans, what we're sitting there seeing a pattern that we think that we've seen before, and predicting that the outcome is going to be the same, but what Mr. Malazzi does is he then grabs that thing by the leash, right, and runs off in a different direction with it, which is always entertaining.
Yeah.
So later in the episode, when 5 I can't remember if she's captured or he's just able to talk to her over a comm link, but it's very funny how respectful Ryu is of 5, and the fact that he is forced to negotiate, because despite the fact that he's captured 5, the reality is that she still has the upper hand, right? And he acknowledges that. And again, once again, it speaks to the strength of the character that is 5. I definitely wanted to ask you, because you and I both had, I won't say complaints, but both had some differing opinions on the Ryu storyline that were not as favorable as other components of the story. You mentioned that you wanted them kind of a little more compacted and tied together, and less of the cut scenes back and forth to it. My feelings at times were, I get it. It's fine. I know that has to progress. But when I talk about an episode and what has the biggest impact, you caught me, because we went through almost an entire podcast not talking about the Ryu scenes. So I kind of wanted to get a sense from you of what your feelings were from this episode with Ryu actually being a major part of the story.
That's fine. Just next episode, give us a break. You knew that was coming.
So you weren't happy with Ryu being in this episode and being like a core part of the show?
It's just kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like, I can't put it on it, but I just felt a little bit bugged, because it's like, it all made sense and stuff like that. But I feel like, you had to mix him up like with the colonist. Like that could have been like its own little episode short. Could have done some really cool stuff in there. But we had to mix Ryu and like everything, and you could have done that, his assassin taking over in a whole episode, and that would have been fine.
Do you feel like this is one of these conflicts that is going on too long for your personal taste?
My personal taste? Yeah.
Okay, because I've mentioned before, like one of my problems with shows is, like I said, and I'll just admit it, right? So my wife, I watch Glee because I need things for my wife and I to watch together, and And I actually like Glee. I like musicals, right? Everybody was hating on the notion of the musical episodes, a crossover episode with the Flash and the other CW shows this past season.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the best episodes of the season, and I continuously point back to, again, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where the episode, Buffy the Musical or whatever it was called, or Once More with Feeling or something like that. I think was critically acclaimed and was nominated for Emmy Awards and is noted as one of the best, sci-fi or cult fan fiction episodes ever. But at any point, one of the things that happened on Glee was there was a season where so one of the main characters is gay, and there was a bully who later turned out to be gay also. But there was a very heavy conflict where there was the hinting that there might be some real that this other person who appeared as anti-gay and was a member of the football team, that there was going to be some real physical injury that could happen, and I didn't know how far it was going to go. So my wife and I were like, I don't know if he's gonna murder the guy or if he's gonna push the other guy to commit suicide or what. So it was very tense, but I didn't like it because it went on too long, and I was like, I don't like feeling this way watching the show, right? I want this resolved. And in that instance, it went all the way to the end of the season. And again, it just made me kind of squirm in my seat. And it was one of those things that, like I mentioned a few episodes ago, where they would keep pulling away from it, and then you wouldn't see that guy for a handful of episodes. Then he would be back, and you would feel highly threatened and very tense. And so I worry about that with the Ryu Ishida line a little bit, of it just being this ongoing threat and you getting to the point where you're like, I just want this resolved. But one of the things I wanted to ask you on that topic is is part of that potentially because we haven't come around to the recognition that for this season that Ryu Ishida is the big bad, right? And so if we compare that to the template of the CW shows, what we're seeing is exactly what we would see on it. If Ryu is the equivalent of the Reverse Flash or Zoom or Deathstroke, isn't this exactly the same pattern that we would see? And does that okay?
I think you're right. But I just felt it's true. But I just feel in Dark Matter we're trained. It's not we. Yeah, I think what it is with Dark Matter, we're not used to that though, because in the last seasons it never focused on one villain, and now it's gone. CW we're focusing on one central villain, and I'm not used to that because we jumped around. There's the General, who was a huge person. The alternate universe, Raza Crew, Ferris Corp. There was one's doppelganger, Jason. Forgot what his name was. Was kind of
Jace Corso.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Jace Corso. We're used to seeing these different villains, and it's always kind of an enjoyment when they come up. But it's like, I don't know what it is about seeing Ryu over and over again. I guess I missed the suspense of, which villain's going to be in this episode.
Right. No. Yeah. You're right. So I think at the end of the day, there's a lot. It's just a mix, right? And some of it's on us, and some of it's on like you mentioned, right? Again, when I think about it, and I think, okay, if Ryu's the big bad, then this, right? I shouldn't have a problem with that, right? Because that's kind of, but like you mentioned, but the first two seasons of Dark Matter specifically weren't that, right? Season 1 was about a lot of kind of swirling conflict and them all trying to resolve who they were and where they were going. And and there wasn't one big bad. It's weird. I don't know how to articulate it, but it was neither. Well, it's the name of it was Conspiracy of the Week, right? So it wasn't because I've taken the Flash to task sometimes for the whole villain of the week kind of approach and how that can get old. And I was about to say that it was villain of the week, but it was conspiracy of the week, and that's kind of how we got around to what our show is titled, right? So yeah, so there it is. So my talking point at this point was, as much as we complained about the Ryu storyline the last few weeks, the truth is that right now, to me, he's the most conflicted character. So even though I'm starting to come around to the notion that he's the big bad, he's also still Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought, and especially because of what Tu said. She said that she wasn't quite sure he killed Nyx, and she hadn't quite made up that he's because one of the other things that I noticed is if he's truly bad, why doesn't he just shoot them out of the sky and kill them flat out, or send his whole armada on there?
Right.
Two also brings up three's like, no, it's about both, and the two's like, no, it's about the blink drive, and I think that's true because otherwise he would have just ended up killing them. And two's like, look, if it ends this conflict, I'll just get rid of the damn blink drive.
Right, yeah. So, and one of the things that I loved, one of the scenes that I loved, and again brings me to this conclusion that he's the most conflicted character, and I'm enjoying. So I understand and I can see your perspective, but I really liked him being in this episode because what we haven't gotten, we've been watching him and looking at him as Emperor Ishida this season. This is one of the first times this season that we've been able to see him as 4 and him working through those conflicts. And I love the scene of him in his old dojo. And him, reminiscing and kind of thinking about how he, the part of him that kind of grew up, right, in a second, as his, I don't know, second young adult lifehood, right, growing up in that dojo and becoming something different. So that was really awesome to see. And it's when he interacts with the Raza crew that conflict reaches its apex. And I liked watching this episode, and I'm hoping we get to see more of it. So at the end of the day, I just thought, like you mentioned, right, I felt like this was a really, really good episode, and best thing of all in terms of show running, I thought it was so well paced, right? It was that right mix of high tension and quieter, more intimate moments, again, like with 2 and 3 inside the brig, but also these high action sequences, the cerebral part of watching 5 and Sarah work the problem, and these verbal conflicts, right? As much as great as it was watching 2 and Ryu duke it out, it was just as excellent to see 5 sparring with the Madam Web guy, right? So, and like you mentioned, I love seeing that we really got to get that fixed line as they walked by Ash on the lower level of the ship. So let's talk really quick about what you mentioned, which is that near the closing scene where Melissa O'Neill threatens Ryu and says, if you come at us again, I will end you. One of the things that I noticed, and again completely unexpected, is when she says that to Ryu this time, there's no, because usually he's very super overconfident and he's kind of a guy who tries to have the last word on everything, right? He's and I'm expecting, I look forward to that fight or something like that. He just looks at her and then nods his head and kind of lowers his head, right? Acknowledging that he gets it, right? So, and sees her as a credible threat. So I don't know. Did you have any other sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. I got the same sense.
Okay. So, so then we start getting to the last minute and 40 seconds of the show, which is always when the biggest reveals happen, right? Quill, again, the female representative, who delegate for one of the independent colonies. And let me back up. I said Quill, but Android and Five are finally getting together, and Five is doing Android's hair. Android comes out, and of course, at this point, and I had reached the same conclusion that, well, obviously it was actually Android that killed the delegate early in the episode. Android says she didn't kill that delegate. So that means somebody else did.
Which I think, again, goes back to it could be 6.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Because my hypothesis was that it was Quill, the female representative.
Oh.
So there we go. We have a hypothesis that we need to keep an eye on. And
or it's both of them together. Just kidding.
that would be very interesting also. And not outside. Again, it's dark matter, so any conspiracy outcome is possible. So it's very interesting in the closing scene. They're back on the mess deck. It's 6, 5, 3, and 2. And my talking point here is so now with the crew reconstituted, I just realized that I think it's the first time that the entire original crew has been back on the Raza since the beginning of the season. Again, and then again, if you consider like the whole episode and the fact that Ryu was on the ship as well, I felt like that was very deliberate and very planned. I feel like that's part of the architecture of Mr. Malazzi's plot line, that he starts the season with them all kind of scattered and separated, and then it's picking this point, which is kind of where we're at kind of the 3/4 point now with episode 8 in the 13-episode season. And I felt like he very deliberately brought them back together at this stage, and that it's deliberate and planned. My other comment on it is a lot of times shows do things like this, and they haven't. And my note is that they haven't earned it, right? Like, you can't have a big reunion scene of bringing everyone back together without having drag them through separation with cost, right? With consequence.
Yeah.
And they've done that. And so I felt like this is kind of a reunion episode. And I feel like the cast and the show crew have really earned it. So having them all back together didn't feel insignificant. It didn't feel like something that was just a throwaway. And again, it feels weighty and important. And I could tell that because when I was watching that scene with them on the mess deck with at least the 4 of the original Raza crew members there, I realized that I felt relieved. I realized that watching these episodes, I felt very tense at them being separated and not knowing if that was going to be permanent. And I caught myself feeling a sense of relief as I was watching that mess deck scene. So, what were your thoughts about?
No, yeah, I would love to see, and then some form of like alternative universe 1, and then we truly have, kind of the full group again. Even I'd love to even now see like Force somehow has a redemption story and all that. It being dark matter, I don't know if we're gonna get such a happy ending, but I would still like it.
Yeah. So of course, then the very end sequence is, and again, I'm an engineer, right? So I've an engineer and also done things, with a lot of being out in the field, right? Doing various tests and stuff. And if it's anything I've lived to see a lot of, it's the watch this, right? Or here we go. And we have that again, right? Where Five and Android are saying, yeah, we're going to run a few tests and simulations, and don't worry, we have this whole thing wired so that we'll have tons of advance warning if we see that things are going in the wrong direction, and we'll be able to shut the blink drive down. And I'm like, okay, so that's telegraphing to me that this is going to go very badly, right? And of course, that's what happens. They light off the blink drive. They think they have enough, using the scientific method, they think they have enough controls in place, and they don't. The experiment kind of runs away from them at a pace that they can't intervene and stop it. And there's a huge, what looks like to be EMP, but something slightly different or stronger than an EMP because it also takes human beings down. And at the end of the episode, the ship and everyone on it is down. So Dave, your predictions on where we're going to go with that being the scenario in the next episode?
Surprisingly, I didn't watch the trailer this time.
Okay, yeah, neither did I. I never do.
So I think that they're going to have some sort of mechanical issues, and they're going to have to move through it. And I think eventually that they were going to have to go through this issue of them going on the tape and finding out who really killed that agent. And, you know, we'll find out if it was Six or Six and Quill, or if it was just Quill. You know, so I don't know if that's going to be when they get the power back on and they finally look at it. That said, I think even if Six is Agent Zero, I think he might have, like with the general, he might have good intentions, you know, about stabbing the colonists in the back, you know. So I believe in redemption for all of these people, you know, to come back.
Yeah, so your prediction is for a rapid follow-up to unsettled events that we saw this episode.
Yeah, and also them being stranded in space.
Yes, which sometimes happens. I have. In fact, I'm pretty sure my batting average on the specific prediction space is 0, because whenever it seems like something happens and I go, yeah, I think they're gonna walk back from that and not revisit that topic until like the end of the season. That's when they like immediately address it in the follow-on episode. And I'm like, I never thought in a million years they would have gone right back to it, right? So, so it'll be interesting to see what we see. I'm wondering if we're going to get another memory meddling episode where the result of them being taken down is restoration of their blocked memories from their original personalities, or if it's going to somehow muck with their memories that are compartmentalized and formulate their sense of self-identification after having the initial memory wipe, or if it's going to affect one of them, like 5 specifically, while it doesn't affect the other. So as always, I'm definitely excited and interested to see what happens next week. So anything else specifically that you want to go over? We're right at about an hour.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for anybody who happened to join in and watch the live show. And if you are watching the archive version later, we appreciate that as well. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're going to dislike, that's fine. Just give us some feedback on what you felt we did badly and could do better. And when you have those suggestions, please remember that we don't get paid to do this. So, you know, we're definitely trying to do the best that we can with the amount of time that we can allocate to this and the amount of resources that we can bring to bear to put on a show to have this discussion. So, you know, and probably most importantly, you know, participate in the discussion, right? If you're a Dark Matter fan who tunes in and watch this, and we definitely know some of you are, because I can see the number of views go up, you know, when Mr. Malazzi retweets it or anything like that. Participate in the conversation. Drop some comments in there. You know, we really would definitely like to be able to talk on the show about more than just our thoughts, but we would love to hear some thoughts from fans as well. And some of you have dropped into the live chat from time to time, and we absolutely appreciate that. So, and perhaps even more importantly than the most importantly thing that I just said, you know, join in on the campaigns to raise awareness to the SyFy Network that, you know, there is a cadre, perhaps an army of Dark Matter fans who really want to see this show get renewed. So with that, the only other thing I'll ask you to do is, you know, please also check out the other shows on the E2KG network. Check out Enough to Keep Going, which airs on Monday nights. And please check out E2KG and 30, both of those are, which happens on Thursday nights. Both of those are our gaming shows, one of which is our long format discussion show. The other, E2KG and 30, is our short format news show. And if you'd like to be a member of the E2KG staff, or more specifically to join Dave and I, and perhaps Osiris Prime as well, next month when we kick off our Defenders podcast, because we are going to grow the entertainment space of the E2KG network and add another podcast next month covering the Defenders. And if you'd like to be on that show as a cast member, please reach out and get in touch with us. Tweet at me, at Agasicles Stamus. You can see that right there on your screen, or tweet at Dave at comicbook90, or drop a comment in the show notes. Whatever's easiest for you. So thanks so much for joining in again. That's going to do it for us. We are out of here. This has been an E2KG Network show, virtualizing the water cooler, one podcast at a time.